The sky above the icy plains was not supposed to burn like that. From far away, it looked like red stars were falling. But they were not stars. They were warships, crashing down in flames. Some belonged to the humans. Some belonged to the others, the ones called the Ulorans. Among the snow and fire, a battle had started where no battle should have ever taken place. Vela had never wanted to fight. She was trained as a healer, not a soldier. But when the war began, all aliens from her class were ordered to take up arms. The Uloran High Council feared humans. They thought humans were spreading through the galaxy too fast. So they declared war. Vela was forced into armor and thrown into the front lines. She had never seen a human before. Only in reports. Only in training. The instructors said humans were monsters, unpredictable, brutal, dangerous. But she wondered, how could beings with music, with stories, with families be monsters? Her questions were met with silence. Her doubts were noted, and her orders remained the same. Fight or be cast out. The battlefield was a frozen wasteland. White mountains, piercing cold winds, and no place to hide. Explosions echoed off the cliffs. Vela saw one of her commanders fall, then another. Then the communication device in her armor went dead. She was alone, surrounded by snow and enemy fire. The retreat order never came. Or maybe it did, and she just never received it. She ran. Not to escape, but to survive. Her armor slowed her down. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from cold. Her legs gave out near a broken ridge, and she dropped into the snow. It swallowed her like a soft blanket, but it didn't give warmth. Her breath grew weak. Her skin, though alien, turned pale blue. She whispered a prayer to a sky that gave no answer. The Elorans had left her. She knew it. She was not worth a rescue team. She was just a low-level medic, a name on a list that no one would read again. If this was how she died, at least it would be quiet. The monsters they spoke of never came. The only thing that came was the snow. But something moved. At first, she thought it was a shadow. Then it was a shape, tall, human. She reached for her weapon, but her fingers barely worked. Her vision blurred. The shape grew clearer. It was a man, wrapped in thick gear, a human soldier. His face was hard, weathered, and full of questions. But not hate, not anger. Just questions. He stepped closer. His hand reached for something, not a gun, not a blade, but a thermal blanket. She didn't understand. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. He knelt beside her. His eyes met hers. There was no fear, no disgust, just confusion. And something. She didn't expect concern. "Can you move?" he asked. She blinked slowly. That was all she could offer. He sighed and began removing his own gear. He wrapped her in warmth, in silence. Then he lifted her, gently, like she was fragile metal. She didn't fight. Her body had no strength left, and her mind was too shocked to argue. The human carried her through the snow. Each step was slow and careful. She could hear his breath, see his eyes scanning the horizon. He wasn't rescuing her because of orders. No one would give such an order. He was doing it because he chose to. And in her fading mind, a single thought remained. The monsters they warned her about looked very different from this man. Asterisk. The human walked for hours across the frozen landscape, carrying the alien girl in his arms. The snowstorm had calmed, but the cold still bit into his skin. His visor was fogged and his limbs ached. Yet he never let go of her. He didn't know who she was or if she could be dangerous. But he had made a choice, and he wouldn't turn back now. She stirred once, weakly, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Her breath came in short bursts. Her body trembled beneath the emergency blanket. Her armor was unlike any he had seen, sleek, elegant, and clearly alien. But she was no threat in this state. She was half frozen and barely alive. He found a small crevice under a jagged ice shelf, protected from the wind. It wasn't a perfect shelter, but it would have to do. He lowered her gently to the ground and unpacked his portable heater. The soft orange glow gave the snow a warmer hue. Her silver-white hair shimmered under the light. He removed his gloves and checked her vitals with a basic med scanner. The readings blinked in alien symbols, but the red lights told him enough. Her pulse was weak. Her temperature was dropping fast. He took off his own coat and placed it over her. His fingers burned in the cold air, but he didn't stop. She opened her eyes slowly. Her pupils were narrow and silver, full of confusion. She looked at him, unsure if she was dreaming. He held up his hands, palms open, and gave a small nod. She didn't move, just stared at him like he was a ghost. Then, finally, her lips parted. "Why?" she asked in broken English. The question cut deeper than any weapon. He didn't have an answer. Not one she would understand. Not yet. He just shrugged and said, "Didn't want to leave you out there." For a moment, silence settled between them. Not the silence of space or war, but the silence of two beings trying to understand each other. She looked away, her eyes filled with something that resembled shame. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and leaned against the icy wall. He handed her a thermal ration bar and a canister of heated water. She hesitated, sniffed it, then took a small sip. Her hands were steady now. Her fingers, long and graceful, curled around the cup. It was the first time he noticed how young she looked. Maybe no older than 20, if she were human. "Name?" he asked softly. She blinked. "Vela," she said. He gave a short nod. "Jaren," he replied. Neither of them said more. The fire hummed softly, and outside the wind howled again. Jaren adjusted the shelter's seal and checked his communicator. Still nothing. The storm had blocked the signal. They were alone for now. Vela closed her eyes, not in sleep, but in thought. She had been raised to believe humans were beasts. Cruel, power-hungry destroyers. She had trained to fight them, feared them, hated them. But this one had saved her, wrapped her in warmth, given her food, risked his life. She opened her eyes. Again, Jaren was sitting near the edge of the shelter, watching the storm. His rifle was beside him, but not in his hands. He looked tired, worn, and thoughtful. Not like a monster. Not at all like the stories. "Why are you here?" she asked. Jaren didn't look back. "Scouting mission. Our dropship went down." "You?" he asked. "Medical support." "My unit left me behind," she replied. He finally turned his head. "I won't," he said. That single promise stayed with her longer than any order she had ever been given. The wind outside roared like a beast trying to break in. Jaren checked the seal of the makeshift shelter again. The snow had piled high against the entrance, creating a small wall that muffled the storm. Inside, the heater still glowed, and the air remained just warm enough to keep them alive. Vela sat curled up, wrapped in the emergency blanket. Her armor was still frozen and covered with frost, but her body had stopped trembling. She stared at her hands, at the skin that shimmered faintly in the low light. Her kind had always taken pride in their purity, their order, their strength. But none of that had saved her. She glanced at Jaren. He was wiping frost off a small solar battery, trying to get it to charge. He looked focused, calm, not like a soldier surrounded by an enemy, not like someone trapped miles from his unit. He worked with quiet patience, his face showing signs of fatigue but not fear. Vela finally spoke again. "Do you believe all aliens are your enemy?" Jaren didn't look up. "No, just the ones shooting at me," he said with a dry tone. Answer surprised her. It wasn't hateful, it wasn't angry. It was simple. It made her feel less like a target and more like a person. She shifted slightly, the blanket rustling. Her voice softened. "I was told humans destroy everything they touch," she said. Jaren gave a half smile. "Some do, most just want to." Live, he replied. The battery gave a weak blink of life. It wasn't much, but it was enough to power a distress signal. Jaren plugged in his comms unit and adjusted the antenna toward the ice wall. The signal struggled, but it pinged once. Then again. A faint connection had begun. We might have a chance, he said as he stared at the blinking light. Vela watched the small device flash. Each blink was a breath of hope. But she knew what it meant too. If the humans received the signal first, her people would not rescue her. They might not even let her live. She looked down again, her thoughts heavy. You're risking your life. For me, she whispered. Jaren shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time I did something stupid, he said. There was silence for a moment. Not the kind that filled a room, but the kind that filled a person. Vela had never known this kind of quiet. Not among her own kind, not in the battlefield, not even in the medical halls. This silence was peaceful. She leaned her head back against the icy wall. Her eyes closed, but she wasn't asleep. She was listening to the storm, to Jaren's breath, to the heater hum, to her own heart slowing down for the first time in days. Your name, she said suddenly. What does it mean? Jaren looked at her. It was my grandfather's name. He said it meant strength. I don't know if that's true, he said. She nodded slowly. Mine means light, she said. Light and strength, trapped together in a hole beneath the ice. It almost sounded like a story told to children. Yet here they were, two lost lives at the edge of a war neither of them asked for, outside. The storm finally began to fade. The wind was no longer screaming. The snow no longer slammed against the rocks. Jaren stood and listened. He removed the cover from the entrance and peered into the pale white daylight. A frozen silence had taken over. The worst of the storm had passed. We move soon, he said without turning around. Vela stood up. Her legs were stiff, but she found balance. Her eyes met his. Together? She asked. Jaren gave a simple nod. Together, he answered. The snow was fresh and deep, but the storm had passed. Jaren stepped out first, scanning the horizon with a sharp eye. The sky above them was clear and pale, painted with streaks of light blue. The wind had dropped, and the only sound now was the soft crunch of his boots pressing into the icy ground. Vela followed behind him. Her movements were slow but steady. She had removed parts of her armor to make walking easier. The cold still bit her skin, but her body had begun to adapt again. She kept her eyes forward, her shoulders squared. There was no sign of enemy patrols. No lights, no sounds. Just endless white plains and broken pieces of wreckage poking out from the snow. Some pieces looked like parts of her own ship. Some looked human. It didn't matter anymore. War had torn them both apart. Jaren held a small device in his hand. It blinked every few seconds, showing him the signal direction. The nearest human outpost was still far, but reachable. If they moved fast and stayed quiet, they could make it by nightfall. Stay close, he said. Vela nodded. Silently and stepped beside him. They walked in silence for a while. Their breaths formed small clouds in the air. Each step felt heavier than the last. Their bodies were tired, but neither complained. They knew that stopping meant death. And neither of them was ready to give in yet. After an hour, Jaren raised his hand and stopped. He crouched low, eyes fixed ahead. Vela followed his gaze. Tracks, fresh ones, not human. Not you, Lauren, either. Something larger, clawed, spread wide apart. Whatever made them was still nearby. Not good, Jaren muttered. Vela knelt and studied the prints. Ice drifters, she said. They hunt movement. They don't fear fire. They attack in packs, she added. Jaren pulled his weapon and checked the charge. It was half full, not ideal. Vela removed a small energy blade from her belt. The blue edge flickered with a soft hum. They both stood slowly and continued forward, now more alert than before. The trail turned through a narrow pass between two frozen cliffs. Sharp icicles hung above like the teeth of a great beast. The shadows here were longer. The light was fading. The temperature dropped quickly as they entered the passage. Halfway through, they heard it. A low growl, then another, not from ahead, but from above. Jaren reacted fast, pushing Vela down behind a broken chunk of rock. A beast dropped from the ice above, landing where they had just stood. Its body was massive, covered in thick white fur. Its eyes were black and empty. Its mouth was full of curved yellow fangs. Vela rolled to the side and slashed upward. Her blade grazed its leg, drawing thick dark blood. The creature roared in pain. Jaren fired twice, striking its shoulder. It turned toward him, roaring louder. Another dropped nearby. Then a third. They were surrounded. Jaren backed toward a higher rock. "Cover my left," he shouted. Vela leaped beside him, spinning her blade with precise strikes. She moved like wind, swift and silent. Jaren's shots were loud and sharp. Together, they pushed back the beasts, one step at a time. A claw swiped and cut Jaren's arm. Blood soaked his sleeve. He winced but didn't stop. Vela saw it and moved faster, stepping in front of him with a fierce glare. She struck again and again until the last creature collapsed into the snow. The world fell quiet again. Jaren leaned on his knee, catching his breath. Vela stood beside him, also breathing hard. The snow around them was marked with blood and broken ice. The sky above had started to darken. They had won, but the price was rising. "You're hurt," she said. "I'll manage," he replied with a faint smirk. She tore a strip from her blanket and wrapped his arm tightly. Her hands were gentle. His eyes didn't leave hers. In that small moment, there was no war, no species, no command. Just two souls surviving together. "We have to move," he said after a pause. She nodded once, and they continued forward, leaving behind fresh tracks in blood-stained snow. The path ahead was rough, but clearer than before. Jaren and Vela walked side by side now. The snow underfoot had hardened into a crust, making their steps louder. The storm clouds had drifted far behind them. For the first time since the crash, sunlight touched the frozen land. Vela glanced at the sky. It was beautiful in a strange way, cold but peaceful. Her breath made soft clouds in the air, but she no longer felt afraid. The silence between them was not empty anymore. It was calm, like they didn't need words to understand one another. Jaren checked his scanner again. The human beacon was closer now, only a few kilometers ahead. A ridge blocked the signal, but he knew they would reach it soon. His wounded arm ached with each step, but he pushed forward without complaint. Vela noticed his limp. "You need rest," she said. "We stop when it's safe." Jaren replied. They passed a burned-out drop pod lodged between two icy boulders. It was Uloran. Vela slowed her steps, her eyes fixed on the symbol etched into the metal. She had trained under that mark, sworn loyalty to it, but it meant nothing now. Not after they left her behind. Inside the pod were signs of battle. Scorch, marks, claw damage, blood that had already frozen to the walls. Jaren picked up a small transmitter from the ground. It was still active. He examined it closely, then looked up. "This thing is still sending," he said. Vela's eyes widened. "That's a distress beacon, but it's not human. If it's active, someone could be tracking it," she said. Jaren turned it over in his hand. "Or someone already is," he added. A sound cracked through the quiet, sharp, mechanical, not wind, not nature. Jaren dropped the beacon and raised his rifle. Vela ducked behind the pod, blade in hand. From the ridge above, a small drone flew into view, then another, then four more. "Recon scouts," Vela whispered. Jaren fired a single shot. One drone exploded mid-air, the others scattered. But it was too late. They had been spotted, tracked, marked. Within minutes, whoever controlled those drones would know exactly where they were. "We run," Jaren said firmly. They sprinted through the snow, weaving between rocks and frozen trees. Behind them, a distant hum grew louder. Dropships, not human. Uloran engines. Vela's heart pounded. She knew the sound too well. Knew what came next. She grabbed Jaren's arm and pulled him left, toward a narrow crevice between ice pillars. "This way. They'll search open ground first," she said. He didn't argue, just followed. They slid between the sharp walls of ice, moving deeper until the noise above grew softer. Jaren crouched low, his rifle still ready. Vela pressed, her back to the frozen wall, watching the sky through a narrow crack. A sleek black ship hovered overhead. Its underbelly opened, releasing small figures in armor. Soldiers, Uloran troops, Vela's own kind. But they looked nothing like her. Their armor was newer, their weapons brighter. Their hearts colder. "They won't stop," she said quietly. Jaren looked at her. "They're not looking for you, are they?" He asked. "They don't care if I live." "They're here for you," she said. Jaren nodded once. "Then we keep moving," he said. They waited until the sound of boots faded. The drones were gone. The dropship drifted out of view. For now they were hidden. But it wouldn't last. Jaren checked his scanner again. The signal was clear now. The human outpost was less than 2 kilometers away. "We run fast." "No more breaks," he said. Vela gave a small nod, and with that, they stepped out of the shadows and into the light again. The snow under their boots turned harder as they climbed. Jaren and Vela moved quickly now, driven by urgency. Their breaths came fast, fogging the cold air in front of them. The beacon on Jaren's wrist blinked more rapidly, each flash reminding them they were close. The ground sloped upward toward a ridge. Beyond it, Jaren said, was a communications tower that linked to the nearest human base. If they could reach it, a rescue team might be able to find them. If not, they'd be caught between enemy fire and freezing wind. Jaren's injured arm slowed him slightly. He didn't mention it, but Vela could see his hand twitch with pain. Still, he pushed forward, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. The man didn't give up. Not when he was bleeding. Not when they were hunted. Vela admired that. It reminded her of the stories her grandmother once told. Of warriors who fought without hate. Who saved not to conquer, but because it was right. She had never believed those stories until now. They reached the top of the ridge and dropped low. Below them, nestled in a flat basin, stood the signal tower. Tall, dark, silent. Snow had piled around its base, but its red light blinked slowly. A sign of life. A sign of hope. Jaren pulled out a small scope and scanned the area. No movement, no heat signatures, no patrols. At least none they could see. He passed the scope to Vela. She studied the base carefully. Then she frowned. "There's a problem," she said. "What kind?" Jaren asked. "There's no power signature. The tower is damaged." "You won't get a signal out from here," she replied. Jaren didn't curse, didn't complain. He simply breathed deep and said, "Then we fix it." They slid down the ridge. Carefully, the snow grew thicker at the bottom. The cold returned with biting force. But the tower loomed ahead, like a shadow against the pale sky. They reached the base and found the main panel half buried under ice. Jaren brushed off the snow and opened the hatch. The wires inside were tangled and frayed. Some had burned. Others were clean-cut. Vela stepped beside him and leaned closer. She reached into the open panel and began working silently. Jaren watched her hands move, precise, confident, not like a soldier, like someone trained to fix what others broke. Her breath stayed steady, her fingers didn't shake. Within minutes, she had separated the damaged lines from the live ones. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "Yes, I wasn't just a medic." I repaired field units, she said. She connected 2 final wires and nodded. Jaren powered up the device. The tower hummed softly. Then the light blinked faster. A signal began to pulse, weak but real. A message sent into the sky. A call for help. Jaren stepped back. Now we wait, he said. They took cover inside a maintenance chamber built into the base of the tower. It was dark but shielded from the wind. Vela sat near the wall, rapping, her arms around her knees. Jaren sat across from her, his rifle still within reach. Will your people come? She asked. I don't know, he replied. She nodded once and looked away. The truth sat heavy in the silence. Not all messages reached their target. Not all signals found a home. But they had done what they could. The rest was not in their hands. A soft beep echoed from Jaren's wrist. He looked down. The signal had been received. A response blinked back. One word displayed in green letters. Copy. His eyes met hers. They're coming, he said. The signal had been received, but safety was not guaranteed. Jaren and Vela stood outside the small chamber, watching the sky. The air was still, and the cold sharper than before. The wind moved slowly, like it too was waiting for what would come next. Vela kept her eyes on the horizon. Her senses were sharp, trained. She could feel something in the distance. Not sound, not movement, just presence. She looked at Jaren and saw the same awareness in his face. Someone else is coming, she said quietly. Jaren adjusted his rifle and nodded. Not ours, he replied. The moment felt heavy, like the world had paused to watch them. Behind them, the tower blinked quietly. Ahead of them, shapes began to form in the snow. Not machines, not drones, soldiers, marching in perfect lines. Uloran elites, Vela froze. These were not ordinary troops. Their armor was black, sleek, and marked with red crests. The same crest that had once been stitched into her own uniform. The elite hunters, trained to remove threats or shame. They found me, she said with a bitter breath. Jaren stood beside her, tall and calm. Then they'll have to go through me, he said. She looked at him. You don't understand. They'll kill you just for standing beside me, she warned. Then I stand, he replied without blinking. The soldiers stopped 20 meters away. One stepped forward. His helmet was sharp, his voice amplified and cold. You Lauren traitor. Step away from the human. You will be taken for correction, he ordered. Vela didn't move. She looked straight into the officer's visor. I will not return with you, she said. You defy your own kind for an enemy? The voice asked. I defy cruelty. I defy betrayal. He saved me when you left me to die, she answered. The officer raised a hand, his weapon powered up. You will both be removed, he said. Jaren stepped forward. Then come and try, he said without fear. A beam of red light shot toward them. Jaren pushed Vela aside and fired back. The beam missed. His shot struck one of the elites in the shoulder, sending him to the ground. Vela rolled and ignited her blade, eyes sharp and ready. The snow exploded with movement. Weapons fired. Beams clashed. Vela moved like fire, striking fast and spinning low. Jaren covered her, aiming with precision and calm rage. They fought as one, each step protecting the other. The elite soldiers were skilled, but they weren't expecting resistance. Two of their own fell before they realized this was no simple extraction. Vela ducked a strike and disabled a second with a clean cut. Jaren took a hit to his armor, but didn't slow down. They pushed forward, not retreating. Fighting not to survive, but to protect each other. The snow burned under their feet. The wind screamed again, as if remembering the storm. Then a new sound broke through the chaos. Engines. A human dropship roared across the sky. Fast. Low. Its doors opened mid-air, and support fire rained down on the enemy position. The elites scattered, some fell, some vanished into the snow. The officer gave a final order to retreat. Vela stood with her blade raised. Jaren stood beside her, bleeding but smiling. The human dropship landed with a sharp hiss. Soldiers poured out, surrounding them in a protective line. One medic rushed to Jaren's side. Another aimed at Vela. "She's with me," Jaren said firmly. The team paused. "She's the reason I'm alive," he added. The commander lowered his weapon. "Then she comes too," he said. Vela looked at Jaren. He nodded once, steady and sure. And together, they stepped into the human ship as the snow swallowed the battlefield behind them. The interior of the human dropship was warm, but the air still felt cold around Vela. She sat quietly near the back wall, her blade sheathed and her body wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her eyes studied the walls, the lights, the soldiers. None of it felt like home, but it didn't feel like prison either. Jaren lay on a stretcher across from her. A medic cleaned the blood from his arm and bandaged it with skill. He didn't complain. He only watched her, eyes calm and steady. The storm outside was over, but something inside them both still stirred. The ship lifted from the snow with a deep hum. It climbed higher, leaving the battlefield behind. Below them, the signal tower blinked its last signal before disappearing in the distance. Ahead was safety. But what came after that, neither of them knew. The commander approached Jaren. "Your report says she's in New Loren. Are you sure she's not a threat?" he asked. Jaren nodded once. "She's a survivor." "Same as me," he said. The commander turned to Vela. "You're aboard a military craft. We don't have rules for this situation. You'll be taken to base for review," he said. "I understand," she replied calmly. Jaren sat up slightly. "She saved me too." "Don't forget that," he said. No one argued. When they landed at the human base, the snow was gone. The world below was green and bright. Trees stretched wide. Birds moved freely. It was the first time Vela had seen Earth, or anything like it. Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak. Jaren walked beside her, arms still bandaged, steps slower than before. Soldiers watched them. Some whispered, some stared. But no one stopped them. The commander had sent word ahead. They were expected. Inside the facility, a room was prepared for Vela, not a cell. A room. She stepped inside and saw a bed, a table, and a screen showing peaceful skies. It was more than she had expected. She turned slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the soft blanket on the bed. A knock came at the door. Jaren entered, moving carefully. "I thought you might like company," he said. She gave a faint smile. "You shouldn't be here." "They'll question you for helping me," she said. "I already gave my answers." "They listened," he said. She tilted her head. "And what did you tell them?" She asked. "That sometimes the enemy is just a story told by fearful leaders. And sometimes the one left behind becomes the one worth saving," he said. She sat down on the edge of the bed. "What happens now?" she asked. Jaren leaned against the wall. "They'll decide if you're a threat, or if you're a witness. But I told them what I saw. And I won't let them ignore it," he said. Vela looked at him, eyes clear. "You trust me," she said. "I chose to." "That choice hasn't changed," he said. Silence filled the room again. But it wasn't cold. It wasn't sharp. It was peaceful. Like a beginning instead of an end. Vela stood and walked to the window. The sky outside was blue, filled with light. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something she thought she had lost. Hope. Jaren stepped beside her. "No more running," he said. "No more monsters," she replied. They stood side by side, two lives from different worlds, shaped by war, joined by one decision: to see each other not as enemies, but as people. And in that shared silence, a future was born.